Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I like doing it out of order because I have no idea what time space you might be occupying as you listen to this as we hurtle through the space soup towards an inevitable boil. Get your spoon, baby. I am very excited today because returning, I think last time I said it was the triumphant return. So this will be the triumvirate return.
That's true.
Of Dash Kwiatkowski to the program. We've got so much exciting things to talk about. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you so much for having me. And I think this is what's cool is I feel like every step of the way with the project that I've been working on, I feel like we've had these like check-ins, like you and me on this show, like the constant for the show that I've been working on has been chatting with you on your podcast as the various milestones, which has been a nice a little island in the cosmic soup.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm happy to be along. And that's my elbows on this table. Sorry. The for those maybe listening to the program for the first time, Dash, comedian, co-host of Psychic Friendz podcast, which might have the best intro music of any podcast you'll hear, and it's just fellow cosmic weirdo out there living the dream, exploring, the universe and, but what's really exciting about what we're going to talk about today is it's a subject that is near and dear to my heart as well. And it's something that is, I feel like you've really, what's the word I'm looking for? Not dug into it, but there's an embracing of, this concept that can be embraced by you in such a unique way and such a special way. And then to be able to manifest that relationship, this intimate relationship you have, and then be able to mirror it back to the world, right? To make material the immaterial concepts in such a way that is very exciting. And we're talking about Liminal. And yes. And Liminal is a queer and trans paranormal investigation show that you have put together. I think I'm getting that description correct. Correct me if
That's
I'm
perfect.
wrong.
Yeah, you're doing great.
And it is, if you go follow Dash on Instagram, I'll put that link in the show notes and all that kind of stuff too. You can see some teasers. You can see some bonus teasers with, some Twin Peaks action. I mean, it's not to mention probably the all-time number one coolest zine I've ever seen. So we've got a lot to cover.
A lot to get to.
I don't know. Where do you want to start?
So I don't know if the listener listening right now has heard the last two times that I was on here. So I think you covered my intro very well. I normally a lot of podcasts will have you to introduce yourself. I feel very pampered to not even have to. This is wonderful. But yeah, no, people can go right now to youtube.com/@Team Liminal. They put the @ sign. I don't know why they've
I don't like it.
I don't care for it personally.
I'm not trying to be grumpy, but I don't need it. I don't need it.
This is my old person thing. I don't have them a lot. I don't most of the time when there's something new. But here's the thing, if it's genuine, if it's a new thing that the kids actually like, I'm always like, hell yeah. Go for it. Even if I don't get it, go for it. But all these tech giant things, putting an @ in the thing, no reason for it, not genuine, don't like it. But youtube.com/@Team Liminal, people can see our pilot episode. And you mentioned the Twin Peaks stuff. In roughly 2-ish weeks, the first weekend of August, we are going to be debuting a little bonus episode that we did investigating with Ray Wise from Twin Peaks. Very exciting stuff. I think you're one of the first people I told about that when we did it.
Oh, I was over here shitting my pants.
I'll say this. a wonderful man, wonderful to work with. The only person who has asked us to come investigate stuff with him and then brought his own paranormal investigation gear to it, which was very
That's
exciting for
really
me.
that's really exciting. There is okay. That's really cool. I
Yeah.
didn't know that Ray was living that life. I
He's
appreciate
deep
this.
into it. He loves it. He also, and I don't know because I have not gone and watched every interview with the man, but he did tell us a ghost story which is included in our final cut of the episode that I don't believe he's told anywhere else. So we are going to be debuting a Ray Wise's like paranormal experience that he had as a young man. So that's also a very exciting thing people can check out when we debut that episode the first weekend of August. But yeah, I feel like I'm all over the place. I
Well,
feel
let
like
me
I'm all over
interject
the
real quick
please,
because I
yeah.
wanted to let people know. Oh, sorry, I think I gotta adjust my volume. I might be coming in. Am I coming in hot on the mic? Uh,
I can hear you pretty good. It doesn't
oh,
sound too
okay.
hot, but I
I thought I
also
was blasting a little bit. I'm gonna link the first two episodes in the
yeah,
show notes. So if people want to, people can go back and they can boom boom, and then they can get
definitely
up to date if they want to jump back into the past. So I'll make that real easy for everybody to go do that
cool.
because I mean there is because I don't want to rehash all the stuff that we've covered
Definitely.
and because just the wildness, I mean, I'm over here, I'm already getting goosebumps about the snakes, the
Yeah.
snake thing.
Oh yeah.
But because I went to go visit Serpent Mound yesterday, so snakes are on the top
Yeah.
of my mind. But it was
Absolutely.
closed, by the way.
Okay.
We didn't look to see if the park was open before we
Gotcha.
drove all the way down there, which is a classic move.
I've done similar things.
Yeah, so still had a great time. But the the investigation that you're going to be the team Liminal
Yeah.
and the because the show is just called Liminal, right?
That's right.
Or
That's right.
yeah. And so when people are, sitting down
Yeah.
to, dig into this, let's get to the heart of the matter here when it comes
Definitely.
to, because this is a unique perspective that Team Liminal is bringing to paranormal research. And, you're teasing some of it with the clips and
Definitely.
and it's very exciting because
Yeah.
it's I don't know. I mean, it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, but inclusivity and, shining a light on, the marginalized or areas of the world that haven't been showcased,
Yeah.
haven't been put forward for like, I guess, media consumption in the
Totally.
world of the paranormal in a major way or anything like that. And in fact, there's, you know, you know, it's not that I want to hesitate saying advantage or disadvantage to, certain, certain people having a leg up on,
Sure.
but when it comes to the concept of liminality and in
Yeah.
the liminal space, it's it's not just like an abstract concept that's a paranormal word, right?
Right.
This is something that is kind of it's something that you have a familiarity with in a way that
So it's
is
interesting. Oh,
different.
sorry. Go ahead.
Or no, I was just going to
It's
say it's like different than maybe some people's relationship to the
yeah.
liminal space.
And I think sort of liminality in general, it has sort of like people are very, there's a lot of a lot of YouTube videos of like liminal hotels, liminal spaces. People have I think are really drawn to it because it's fascinating. This idea of something that is in flux and fluid. I think every time we're in a space like this, there's a little bit of a like it's not a bad unnerve, but there's a you get this feeling. You understand that you're in something different, especially the more abandoned, the sort of the more spooky. And I think for me, because there are some great ghost shows featuring queer and trans people. There are some great ghost shows that exist for sure. But I think the thing that I wanted to do that I haven't really seen done is get into this idea that it isn't just that we can do this thing. It isn't just that, it isn't just that queer and trans people can investigate the paranormal too, because obviously everybody can, and I encourage everyone to. I actually think it makes your life a lot more interesting if you even just take a second to go sit in a spooky space and see how you feel and do some talking and see what happens. But this idea that we are naturally drawn to it. This idea that there's something about queerness and something about transness and something about liminal gender identity that sort of doesn't, it's not just that we're welcome in the space. It is that we are drawn to the space. It is that the space is drawn to us. You know, and this is the thing, I don't recall everything that I've talked about with you on this show, but I don't think I've talked about this. I've been sitting and reflecting. There is a thing that happens in the show, and I won't spoil it because it's a, you know, people can go and watch it, but there is a thing that happens in the show where we are in a theatrical space. We are in an old theater that is used to tell the story of the Bell Witch. And we interact with something that sort of playfully, we, for the rest of the shoot, we called Gay Director Ghost. And so we talk about Gay Director Ghost a lot. But the further I've gotten from this space, the further I've gotten from that interaction, the more I've sort of felt like that wasn't just, you know, the ghost of a living person. I felt more like this was a guiding, sort of like much more encompassing and powerful force that in a lot of ways sort of guided and created a narrative for us where we didn't necessarily realize something that was going to come. We didn't realize all of the sort of the threads in the pathway, because we're very, when you watch it, it's like, it feels very like, oh, this is a narrative from point A to point B. And that is as much a surprise to us as it will, as it will be to anyone watching. And this sort of guiding force, I've realized there have been so many moments in my life, even before I was doing anything with the paranormal, even before I got into it, where that sort of, that force, and this is, you know, I imagine if someone is listening to your show, they're on some of the same wavelengths as I am, so this will make sense. I realize that this is a thing that sometimes I say stuff, right? I will just say stuff to people, and I'm like, "Oh, you don't know how crazy I am." That's fair. Okay, let me do some explaining. But I always get this feeling like, when different things, when different sort of forces or energies interact with you, it almost, they have a similar sort of like, I don't know any word to use other than flavor, where it sort of feels like, have you ever had that where you have certain experiences that feel like the same thing in a way that you can't really explain tangibly? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
It's for me, I've always thought of it as some kind of weird physical, even though it's always kind of physical, a physical
Yeah.
deja vu of some kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a cousin of deja vu or
Yeah,
something.
it's like a familiar touch from something cosmic and different. And so this sort of this feeling of guidance, it I realized that I've had this sort of like in my life and like over my life for as long as I can remember. I have this I moved to New York City many years ago. I was living in New York City, and in the first couple of months of being there, I had this month where I was like, I actually don't know if I can make rent this month. And I was like, I'm gotta figure this out. I gotta figure something out. And literally the week after I said this out loud to myself, I got a check for $1,000 in the mail from a class action lawsuit that I didn't know I was a part of. And it has the same sort of the guidance and the care and the touch of something saying like, hey, I got you. You're not going to drown in this moment. And there is this feeling that I've had just sort of for the course of most of my life where, and I didn't have words for it in the past. I didn't have words for it back then, but just this idea that there is something big and sort of like cosmic and undefinable and weird that is sort of like watching and paying attention and sort of like waiting for me to start looking back at it, if that makes sense. And so I think one of the interesting things, and I posted a clip of this from the show, this is not unique to me. This is a thing when I'm talking to other queer and trans people who do magic, who do tarot, who are sort of in the paranormal. There is this idea that something is looking out for you. And you know, if you're a skeptic, if you want to say that this is a mundane, very, you know, a desire to sort of feel held, maybe in a situation, in a world, or with a family that doesn't hold us, whatever. Sure, maybe. But I also am not convinced that the things that we sort of think and manifest in our mind don't sort of come to exist in more of a practical way as well. But so the what I sort of the thing with the show that I feel very good about is it's not just a show about queer and trans people paranormal investigating. It's a show about how queer and trans people are sort of naturally drawn to and welcomed in and sort of like held by the paranormal itself.
That's really rad. And at the heart of it, it's a it sounds like what you're describing is it's a seek and find,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
as opposed to a hide and seek, right? It's a seek and find. and
Totally.
and as you described that a few minutes ago, or what were you talking about the you know waiting for this thing waiting to be interacted
Yeah,
with or spoken back to. I envisioned in my mind's eye, like, there's a parent of some kind waiting for their
absolutely.
child to be able to finally speak, to communicate
Absolutely.
in that way. And I'm like, oh wow, like maybe that's where we're at when it comes
Yeah.
to like the trajectory of being able to communicate with the other side, or the in between, or whatever, the interdimensional. We're still in our baby phase
Yeah.
of finally understanding. I mean, even if it's been thousands of years, right, it could still be a baby phase
Totally.
of finally understanding that there is this cosmic force, this archetypal energy
Yeah.
that has been waiting for us to be like, hey, what's up? you know
Absolutely.
yeah, okay.
And you think about, the various people in history who have felt like, oh, I'm talking to a god right now, or I am talking to angels, or I'm talking to the sea, I'm talking to the forest, I'm talking to the sky or the sun or any of these things. And I think it's so easy to look back and be like, oh, this was just myth making, this was just explaining why the sun is in the sky and it's hot and all this stuff. But like, it could be that and another, you know what I mean? It can be multiple things. I've been saying for a while, we had this time, I think, in our history when we're like, oh, if you see a ring of mushrooms, that's a fairy circle, that's because fairies are there. And then at some point we took over, science said, like, actually, this is the mycelium and this is how they grow, and we understand that for a mundane practical reason. I'm trying to say maybe it's both things, you know what I mean? Like, maybe the practical reason why something happened does not necessarily negate or contradict or otherwise explain away the magical explanation as well.
Yeah, because I was thinking chicken or the egg. I mean, it's
Yeah,
at one point I was thinking chicken or the egg. Are these abilities or these sensations and feelings we have,
yeah,
are they actually this thing? And then later we come up with like, oh, well, there's something called archetypes and
yeah,
imagery, and our brain uses it to process blah blah blah. Well, that only came after we were already feeling these things, or
yeah,
and then it's like, but then the way you're describing, and I'm like, well, was it the chicken or the egg? And it's like, well, why does it have to be the chicken or the egg? What if they
absolutely.
both came at the same time?
Yeah,
Uh, and I
absolutely.
love that idea.
And I love the chicken egg metaphor too, because I think a lot about evolution. I think a lot about cycles. I think a lot about breaking cycles. And I think a lot about, evolution. There's going to be a scientist somewhere listening, maybe, who gets mad at me for this, but I will say evolution sort of generally has guided what I sort of believe to be and this is, I'll get back to the show in a second. This is my greater thesis on the meaning of life. And I was
Okay.
talking to a friend
Oh,
about this,
okay.
and it's just slow improvement over time. I think that's the whole fucking thing. I think that's the whole thing. Slow improvement over time. The world does it. Evolution is random changes that aren't intended to be an improvement, but a random change happens that improves it. And then the random change happens, it takes iteration and trial and error. When I think about the human condition, I think about my own life. I think about where I've come from. I was raised by very toxic, narcissistic people who raised me in a way that I did not know how to make friends. And then at some point I had to break that down and say, like, I am lonely. I got to figure out how to make friends. I got to figure out how to be a person. And it's not a change that happens immediately. It takes years and years of work, but it's slow improvement over time. And I think the whole reason that everything exists is just to get a little bit better, like one day at a time. You know what I mean? And that's just, um
Well, it's a beautiful way to look at things, and I can appreciate the optimism that is the foundation of this. We're gonna pick up on this thought. I want to pull this thread a little bit more. We come back with my buddy Dash. And we're going to do a commercial here. And I don't know what those commercials are going to say, but you do have a fast forward button. I just want to remind you that. And I'm guessing they're probably going to be about, 60 seconds. So just, kind of figure it out. When you hear the dulcet tones of our voices, that's when you'll know the commercials are over. So patreon.com/Ryan Singer, $3 a month gets you no commercials plus other stuff over there. So we'll be right back talking about the meaning of life. No big whoop.
Just a little thing.
Just a little thing.
Just a little thing. I talking about, we're talking about like, I don't know, it feels like this big question of why we're here, right? And for me, I think I'm here to both improve myself and try to make things around me better than they were. And I do this with political activism. I organize with my local chapter of JVP. We're doing a lot of really cool stuff on the local political level that hopefully can grow to a bigger level. And and I'm trying to be a voice in sort of in the field of the paranormal that I think has not been necessarily represented as much as it could be in general. And I don't want to say this like this is a fully self-sacrificial thing. I love it. I'm having a great time too. Like it is a thing for me as well. I was thinking about cycles though, and it's funny because so the last thing that we shot, and I definitely haven't told you about this in the show because we shot it since, but when we did go to LA to shoot the show with Ray, I had this wild experience, and it's happened to me a couple of times, and so we land in Palm Springs, because one of Rosa's moms lived there. And so we landed there. We went to the zoo. Very nice. And I'm on my gay little apps, and I immediately see my mom's token gay best friend from when I was a child, which is terrible vibes, not great vibes. I'm no contact with my parents. Definitely not trying to talk to their friends on gay dating apps. And so but immediately I just have this feeling, and this is a feeling I've got, and I don't know how to explain it other than it comes from like over this shoulder. It comes from over my right shoulder. That sounds very silly. I don't know how to explain it. That's where it comes from. And I have this feeling, and I say to Jules, my partner, I say to Rosa, my friend and my co-host, I'm like, we're gonna see my mom on this trip. And they're both like, no, you're not. Like, Rosa's like, LA is the second biggest city in the country. And Jules is like, also, your mom lives in Texas now. And I'm like, for sure, believe what you want. I'm telling you, I know this is going to happen. Our second day in Los Angeles, we're driving around. We're trying to get, because we were investigating Ray's daughter. Ray's daughter is a very good friend of mine. I actually have been friends with her before I knew who her dad was. Had no idea. I just thought her name was kinda wise, and I thought her name was like a silly nickname, like kind of wise was
Oh,
that's
okay.
her name is kinda wise. And then later I was like, oh, your dad's in RoboCop, huh? Cool, no idea. And so we're investigating Kina's house. It felt very haunted, and like just a lot of heavy energy, A very dear friend of Kina's had passed away in her back house. Very like, just like, this person was at the end of their life, and Kina was like, stay with me, live with me, like, you don't have to pay rent, like, I just want to spend time with you and I want you to be comfortable. Really sweet. Kina's just like one of the sweetest people I've ever met in my entire life. But there was a lot of very, very heavy, very like sad energy. And so Rosa and I had gone to a Botanica to like get some candles and some like lightening, cleansing sort of feel um stuff. And it was this whole day of misadventure where, like, I thought that the rental car key ran out of battery, and we were driving around a different spot. So all of these things delayed our trip, just to the point where we pull up at this red light, and
No,
on the left,
no.
I look, and I lean back just so that my head is not visible. She didn't see me. And I'm like, that's my fucking mom. Pulled up next to us, pulled up in the car next to us. And Jules and Rosa are freaking out. They're like, what the fuck? Because they look and they're like, yeah, that's her. And they're like, how are you not freaking out more? And I'm like, because I knew. because I knew this was going to happen. And every time, and so for a long time, what's funny, there's a moment like that in the pilot too. There's a moment towards the end of it when the second snake shows up. Before that, I say, I just have this feeling. I just knew that a second snake was going to show up. And then it did. And I have this thing. And so at first I was like, oh yeah, I just have this like shithead detector. I've just got this like bad
Snakes
thing.
and bad mobs. Is there a difference between what I just said? I don't know, but snakes and bad mobs, we'll just call them shithead detectors.
But this, and then it happened weeks later in Salem with the person who I like haven't seen in a long time. I was sitting outside of a cafe. We did Salem Horror Fest. We did the festival circuit. We got a bunch of fun festival laurels. We won some prizes for the pilot. We won awards from the 40 Film Fest in the UK. Very exciting for me. The ASSAP or the Association for the Study of Anomalous something. I forget the acronym, but they said we had the best documentary. Very exciting. But so we're at a different festival, and I had the same thing where I had this like this feeling from right here that was like, you're gonna see someone you don't want to see right now. And then this person walks up who I hadn't seen in years, and I was like, you were right. I didn't want to see that person. But at first I was kind of like, oh, it's just like an early warning detector for bad things. And I was talking to someone and they're like, I don't think that's what it is. They're like, you're getting processing done on a thing that if you were faced with it without the processing would be a lot more stressful. If I hadn't had any idea that I was going to see my mom in that car, it would have been a lot harder, behind the wheel of a car, seeing like, a person who's triggering in a lot of ways. There's danger. It could be a dangerous thing. Seeing a second snake in the woods that's now flanking you, there's danger. And so having this feeling beforehand, it's almost like this, like, hey, you're going to be good. Like, do not worry about it. Something that is very tense is coming at you in a second. Do some processing now, figure it out. And then when you're met by it, it has allowed me to approach these tense and otherwise troubling things with a much more level head, with my grounding, with sort of feeling grounded in it. And that to me, like, that's that same sort of guiding energy. That's that same sort of like being held by whatever you want to call it. I may or may not think that I'm engaged with the god Dionysus, because again, that's the kind of crazy that I am. Been thinking about my life and making sense of it. And that's the one that makes sense, which is crazy as a sober person, but I will say it makes a lot of sense to me. It makes
It's
a lot of sense to me.
Oh, I mean, it's really fascinating, and there's a million questions that just immediately start like,
Yeah.
but that we don't have the answers to. I'm guessing because it doesn't sound like you were doing follow. Like, what are you doing here in Los Angeles at the stoplight? Like, that's
Yeah.
not something you were, that's not a path you were trying to go down. And
No.
it's, I'm curious if this starts happening if there's any correlation to the moment of realization that there is something there, and that it is waiting for communication back, and or if this processing or early warning system or shithead detector has been around for a long time.
So I think it's because one thing I'm very good, and you can say that this is childhood trauma or you can say that this is neurodivergence, but I'm very good at pattern recognition. And I think that's one of the things that makes the paranormal, that makes synchronicities specifically really stand out to me, because as soon as like two or three things line up, I'm like, oh, I can triangulate that. Like, I know I can see the pattern that emerges in terms of like things that happen to me. And I think a lot about even at my edgiest when I was in college and I was like, yeah, there's no, like edgy atheist, nothing. I was never exactly an atheist for one specific reason, and it's because I've always believed in luck. And I've always said, I am a lucky person. I've always believed that I'm a lucky person. And this is not, winning the lottery lucky, but this is something happens that stops you from having a much, much worse time than you could have happened. Something inexplicable or something serendipitous or something sort of very synchronous happens that makes you feel like, oh, wow, that's so lucky. And I think that when I was just sort of categorizing it as luck, it still happened. It still happened for sure. But the moment, and I think this is true for a lot of paranormal stuff, the moment you start expressing like, hey, is someone out there? Is something out there? Like, am I being communicated with right now? Is the moment when it starts to happen sort of with regularity. The moment that it sort of starts to happen in a way that almost seems like you are generating more of a response even by just acknowledging it and greeting it and saying hello and being like, all right, well, where can this take me?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're probably all like that to a certain
Yeah,
degree,
absolutely.
where as soon as we get acknowledged, we're more apt to communicate more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And none of us want to be the screaming child at the grocery store just waving around like a toy. And then, I wonder, I mean, that would be a fun like hidden camera thing to do. You just send a random kid into a grocery store and you just have them pick up something and start screaming until some stranger buys it for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do feel like the reciprocity of communication.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do feel like community there's 100% there's comfort in community. I think,
Yeah.
with a little bit of thought, I think everyone would probably agree with that as a universal truth.
Yeah.
And I don't, maybe it doesn't change whether
Yeah.
we, pass off, from the physical form into the after form, or these other energies or entities, etc., that exist that maybe weren't human beings, never
Yeah.
were.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a fundamental universal attribute of connection and community, right?
Yeah.
And because what you're describing is, because part of me was wondering too, like, oh, I wonder about the world of manifestation too,
Yeah.
to a certain degree. And because one of the things that really fascinates me is, oh, a psychic intuition about something that's getting ready to happen.
Yeah.
And the I guess the slightly different energies that would be that,
Versus
or
making it happen.
making it happen, right?
Yeah.
And
There's that chicken and the egg again.
exactly. And so do you think that it's a 100% one thing, or maybe it's an 80/20? Like, let's talk about like the situation with the stoplight with your mom. do you
Yeah.
do you feel like you actively participating in this acknowledgement of a feeling therefore then moves it along as well?
I think perhaps I've reached out to some people who are still in contact just to be like, hey, what the fuck is she doing in Los Angeles? Whatever. And there's a long story. There's stuff with her adopted parents that sort of took her there, stuff that all makes sense. It makes sense when you line it up. So, this is I think my genuine answer, I think my actual answer, because sometimes I just start talking and then I'm like, wait, no, I have an actual thing. I'm
Oh,
sure I'm sure you can't relate to
that's
that at all.
not at all. Not at all.
My answer, I think, is that I think it's both. I think it's both things. And I think we just sort of, and this is the sort of the existence this is a liminal space, right? This is a liminal answer, but I think it's both things. And I've been thinking about this a lot, where at the end, in the back half of the pilot episode, where we start getting tools and pieces for a magic spell that we didn't plan to do, and then this really crazy line of synchronicities that happens in the sort of the second half of our big pilot episode. I've thought 100 times, 1,000 times since filming it, I've been like, what if one of those things didn't happen? Like, what if we made one different decision and went to a different place and then a different place, and then none of those things happened that led us down this path that we went on? And I had this moment where I was like, then a different line of things would have happened that would have taken us down not exactly the same, but functionally the same path to the same place. And I genuinely believe that. I genuinely believe not to be, not about fate, not about like, oh, this was, we were destined or predestined or anything like that. But I think that as we set out on this path, on this like quests to get to this place, to investigate this entity, to sort of poke around and see what we could learn about the strange, I don't think I don't think we just so happened to stumble upon the right path. I think that the path that we found was always going to be the path, sort of no matter what steps we took to walk down it. So, in terms of, are you aware of something because you're creating it, or are you aware of something because you're sort of being touched by something that connects with temporality in a way that we don't perceive or process in our sort of like physical human bodies? I think it can be both things. And I think that when you start thinking about like the way sort of time moves in a weird way back and forward with some other, I've heard some other interviews, I'm completely spacing on who I've heard talk about this, but this idea of time not really being this linear thing, that the way that we think about it, I think it can absolutely be both at the same time in a way that seems to sort of contradict, but is just sort of the big magic of it all.
Yeah, the big magic of it all is, I think it's the part that, keeps us all here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can be invited to a party,
Yeah,
but you still have to go to the party.
yeah,
So I love this idea that it's both, because I'm kind of thinking about this as a thing that happens, like this great
yeah,
invitation to this party, and but you do have a choice. Okay, well, I
yeah,
got this great invitation. Am I going to accept it? And even if someone comes up and completely gifts us something,
yeah,
we still, even at the smallest, like, and I'm thinking about a milkshake. Someone just randomly comes up and says, "Here's the most delicious milkshake," and
yeah,
I still have to just reach out my hand, and then, which
yeah.
isn't a lot. I didn't have to do a lot, but I'm still participating on a small percentage here,
Absolutely.
of accepting, and I think sometimes, the big magic of it all can be so jarring
Yeah,
that when we're not looking to accept, we're not looking to allow,
yeah,
and it rattles so loudly that eventually we have to just say, okay, begrudgingly almost. I'm curious. Okay, let's do it. Let's do our last little break real
yeah.
quick here for commercials. And we come back. I want to ask you, okay, I want to ask you, so what is it all for? I want to go
Yeah.
big here. I want to go big here.
Okay.
So we're going to come right back with my buddy Dash, and we're going to talk about what is it all for? I mean, what are we hoping to ever get out of this and achieve or find, and in these great explorations? So don't forget, over at patreon.com/Ryan Singer, you can listen to this without commercials. Wouldn't that be so nice? In today's world. So we'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and we're well, before, let's just tease a little bit real quick too before we get
Yeah.
into this big question, because I feel
Okay.
like we're going to go down many winding roads.
You and me?
It's all going to, I mean, gosh, I mean, it's just such like just these straight narrow pathways from point A to point B conversationally. The Kickstarter, or not the Kickstarter, the crowdsourcing.
Yeah. So it's Seed and Spark. Seed
Seed
and
and
Spark
Spark.
is the website. It's really cool for it's filmmaking specifically. It's one of the reasons we like it. They have a really high success rate for projects, and it really focuses on like marginalized voices. And that's one of the things that really drew me to Seed and Spark. Yeah, it's live now, and we have a lot of different ways that people can contribute to basically episode 2 and beyond. If we exceed our goal for episode 2, it'll let us do episode 3, it'll let us do episode 4. And this is to help us get gear, because the nature of, we're shooting this show. I really want this first season to be focused in sort of the rural American South, because I just think it's a beautiful place, and I really want to highlight the incredible queer and trans people who are living there. I think it's so easy for people on the coasts to just write off the South and, have never spent time there. And Memphis is like a second home to me. If it weren't so goddamn humid, I would consider living there. The humidity destroys me. I can't do it. But I love the city. I love the people, and I have some people that I care about so dearly and so much. The first before I was figuring gender stuff out myself, the first they them person I ever met who was transitioning away from masculinity, the first they them person I ever met like that, is someone who found me doing comedy online, this comic, and they were just like, they reached out to me like, hey, what's it going to take to get you to Memphis? And I was like, literally just enough money that I'm not losing money. Like,
Yeah.
I'll go anywhere. I just love to tour, all this stuff. And usually when someone reaches out to say something like that, you never hear back from again. And I was like, hey, but this is the amount of time I would love to be out there. That means I need this amount of money or a place to stay or all these things. And 2 weeks later, they're like, I booked it for you. I lined it up. Let's go. And that was my first trip out to Memphis. And that is a person who I love with my whole heart. They very sadly, they passed away a couple of years ago. And so, Liminal is in a lot of ways dedicated to them. Their name was PA, and there's a really, really dear person to me. But they introduced me to this community, and it was the first time as me, a person from California, being like, oh my God, like this is like nothing that anyone told me about the South and this like big scary thing is true. And like, sure, there are scary parts. There's scary parts in New York, though. There's scary parts everywhere. There's a lot of places where I struggle. I have all sorts of cute skirts and dresses, and I'm a loud, confident person, and I struggle to wear them in the world because I don't know how people are going to react to me, and that's scary in a blue state. That's scary in a red state, and I think we have this idea about the South from people who haven't been there, and so that said, we're in rural parts of the South, so I can't always rely on a good place to rent a camera because who knows where we're going to be or where a camera rental is. So, the crowdfund on Seed and Spark, that's going to get us the money to get our own gear, and we'll just have it and we can shoot everything from there on. It's going to get us travel. It's going to get us lodging. It's going to let us be able to pay the director who is also shooting for us and editing and doing all this work, to pay him, if I'm being real, a lot less than he deserves. He's given me a really good, rate on it. And so this is just like, it is the ability to have creative control over this show, this show that is so important to me, and to be able to make it and distribute it and put it out there so people can do it. We shot the pilot, it's like 3 years ago now, and I know
Wow.
how sort of momentum based paranormal investigation is, so I feel like we've already there have been so many stops and starts and stops and starts, and I finally this year have just been like, you know what, I'm not waiting for, some network to pick us up and then say, actually, we're going to shoot it and then it's not going to air, or actually whatever, any of these things. This is the point where I'm like, hey, actually, I want to shoot my show. I want to put it out in the world, and I want to see what happens with that. And so that's, let me pull up the URL for the Seed and Spark. I'm sure you'll have it. It's liminal, seedandspark.com/fund/liminal show. And that's going to be our Seed and Spark link, and people can go there. And we have a lot of really cool incentives, a lot of the base stuff of personalized thanks on the social media. We've also got stuff like, I made this zine I was showing you before we started recording. It's Liminal Presents A Beginner's Guide to Ghost Hunting. It's a really cute little zine I wrote. People
That's
ask me all the
so
time,
cool.
like, how do you ghost hunt? How do you do it? And so I was just like, you know what? I'm going to put together just the really easy steps and some gear recommendations. It's got really cute art throughout there. You can see a
That
little
is so cool.
illustrated spirit box, tape recorder, notepad.
I just picked up a tape recorder at a thrift store
I
in
love
Michigan,
them.
a
It's so
handheld.
fun. Yeah.
I can't wait to use it.
There's me as the magician
Oh, there we
from
go.
Tarot. So, and then this scene, the only way to get this scene is by backing us on Seed and Spark. We've got some stuff like we've been doing. We did a lot with when we were shooting with Ray, where we've been doing a lot of Polaroid stuff where we're taking Polaroid pictures. Some of the stuff people can get are like some of the Polaroids that we shoot on our investigation. Like me and the team will sign the back of them. We've got some stuff like we'll do a tarot read for one of the backers at a certain level. If they, from the location, like we'll film it when we're on location, do a little tarot pull for
Oh,
them
wow.
in the space, stuff like that. So we've got a lot of really cool backer rewards, a lot of really cool ways for people to get involved. And ultimately, I think everyone I've talked to about this project is really excited. And I think being able to sort of like get a hand on that ball and sort of feel like you are part of this thing as it grows, as it becomes, as it becomes something that people can enjoy and watch. And I'll say this, I think I've said this to you a bunch of times, but I'm one of the things that I'm so excited about putting this show into the world is every time I've watched something paranormal, every time I've watched something and I've started to have little connections from my life, little things that connect me to whatever I'm seeing on the screen that are like, that's wild that came up. That's synchronous with something from my life, or that's synchronous with whatever. I'm so excited for that. I'm so excited for people who I don't know, who I've never met, to watch this thing and say, this tarot pull or this thing that came up during your Estes session or this thing that connects to my life, and then they can sort of feel like they are a part of this too. And I'm so excited for that. I'm just excited to, I don't know, magic is so interactive in a way that sort of brings you into the presence of strangers, and I'm so excited for strangers to sort of feel the sort of the magic that we've poked and touched and investigated. You asked before I started talking about the Seed and Spark, you asked about what is it all for, I think, or what was your wording? You said,
Yeah, I said like, what's not what's the point, but it was kind of like, what's the big point here? And I, real quick, I do love how I love this idea. I don't need permission
yeah,
to make this show.
yeah,
And for so long as creatives, we've been told we have to, there's a certain way of going about,
yeah,
producing art and producing these ideas that we have so people can see them. And
yeah,
we no longer need to ask for permission. And, we take the agency back,
yeah,
and the universe will reward us
yeah,
for moving forward and taking that initiative to, because the universe, I think, is starving
yeah,
for art and for
yeah,
diversity,
yeah,
and specifically diversity in art. And I think the universe is, loves it, and it only wants more
yeah,
once it gets a taste. And I think that is one of the coolest things about the universe.
yeah,
um but so but that feeds into like, well,
yeah,
what is the big idea?
yeah.
What's the big idea
What's the big
here?
idea? I think the big idea, for me at least, I think the big idea, like why I do any of the things I do, is I think, and this is, I think so. I've got like a personal answer, and I think there's a bigger answer. And the sort of the bigger answer, I think, ties into the thing I was saying about gradual improvement over time. I think the idea is augmentation. I think the idea is to grow and enlarge, whether it is improving something that you want to do, or having more knowledge or more understanding, or even just more fulfillment in like a real, genuine way. I think the big idea for me personally is sometimes a thing will get in my head and it will feel like it'll drive me crazy if I don't do something about it. And this is both personal projects. This is this show Liminal. I had this idea of like, oh, I think I think that like I think queerness and transness are intrinsically connected to magic. And then dove into all these books. I dove into books. You sent me books. I started reading the books that you sent me. I started reading stuff by Leslie Feinberg. I started reading sort of like trans history and queer history and magic history and ghost history and all of these things, thinking about genders outside of the binary that were accepted by other cultures in the past, pre-colonial, that people just said like this is a person who is not, not man, not woman, is something else. And also they are tapped into the source, they're tapped into magic, they're between this physical world and a spiritual world. They are, people who, and you can't, and I say this in the show, but you can't call these people trans because that is anachronistic. Trans sort of very explicitly refers to trans people as they sort of are conceptualized today, but people who existed outside of the Western gender binary, outside of the gender binary. And I had this idea, and then when it's in my head, it's like, all right, well, I have to make it now because otherwise it'll bore into my brain and I'll go crazy. But it's not, it's, you know, it's, that's personal stuff. And then even outside of that, I mentioned earlier that I'm organizing with JVP. You know, as I look at the world and I look at, you know, things happening that are, you know, some of truly the greatest evil of our time being perpetuated, I was like, I have to be doing something right now in my life to be standing up in the ways that I can. Otherwise, I'm going to go crazy. Otherwise, I'm going to go crazy if I'm not, if I can't be doing something to fight genocide, I'm going to feel crazy, you know? And I think it's so hard because culturally, and this is one of the things about capitalism, we're so taught that heroes are Luke Skywalker. And I don't mean like a white dude, I mean one person. We're so taught culturally that a hero is one person who rises up and makes the difference. And it simply has never been the case. You know, our power comes from numbers. We are a communal species. We are a species. We're supposed to be in community. We don't have, you know, we don't live hundreds of years like a turtle, right? Like we are frail, temporary living organisms that the only way that we have been able to survive and rise to this the sort of the safety and the way that we exist is through community and through supporting each other. There's that this gets talked about all the time, but it's it's like a Neanderthal skeleton with the like the broken leg, but didn't die from that, died way later, right? And the takeaway from that is this person kept living after like losing a leg. How does that happen? Community. We have always been, we have always needed each other. We have always needed support. We've always needed, you know, people. We can't we can't fix everything on our own, and we aren't supposed to, and we were never supposed to. We need to rely on other people, communities, a team, friends, people. You need to be able to reach out and say like, hey, I'm struggling, hey, I need help. um and I my brain, Ryan, I just there's I don't know how to think but in tangents, you know. All of this to say, all of this to say, these things will happen in my brain, and it's just this moment, and there's always a moment where I'm like, I have to be acting on this now. I have to be doing something on this now. And I think part of it for me is, you know, I think there's a lot of people who will say like, oh, leftists are pessimists. Leftists are pessimists. And I'm not self-IDing as a leftist, because have you met people who self-ID as a leftist? Oh my God. But I think that there is something to radical left politics at the very least. And I do not think that there is anything more optimistic than to look at the world as it experiences climate change, to look at the world as we have rising fascist powers across this country, across various countries, to look at military spending and genocide and war and all these things happening, animals dying out because of climate change, all these things, and to say, I'm still going to try. I'm not only am I going to try, I'm going to bust my ass doing work, because I think I have to believe that change is possible. I have to think that things can get better. I have to think that things can improve. And it ties back into the meaning of life, and it ties back into the what is this all for? Because what is this all for? What's the whole deal for me? If I believe that something can exist that I think should exist, then I have to be trying to make it exist. And that's where I am with this show. That's where I am with, you know, with trying to explore the paranormal in general. I think a lot of people are trying to be like, uh I'm gonna get a picture of a ghost. I'm gonna get a hard picture, and it's gonna go in the Smithsonian, and it's gonna prove forever that ghosts exist. That's not how I approach things. You know this. I like to think that there's some stuff that, if I'm being real, I don't think that we can measure with a device, and I don't think that we can get a hard picture of. But I think that makes it more interesting to me. And I have this idea that I can learn something that matters to me and maybe that matters to the world. And that's why I do it, is this idea that what I'm doing, it feels important. It goes with political activism and it goes with paranormal stuff. And it just sort of, yeah, it's just this feeling that something feels important. And maybe this is madness and ravings and all of these things, but it feels important to me, and so I'm gonna keep plugging away,
Yeah, I love it. And if it is madness, I say yay. I say yay to the madness. I will always vote yay to the madness. Because if this is, in fact, madness,
Yeah,
contemplate a world of sanity, which
yeah,
is a prison
yeah,
of void of imagination, void
yeah,
of belief, void of hope. So if this is madness, I say yay. And
absolutely.
I embrace it. The I love the way you've laid this out. And so often in like you said, in the world of capitalism, and it's a very this one hero, or
Yeah,
this person is a genius.
yeah,
It's so singular and it's so individual.
yeah,
And oftentimes, and I've been guilty of it so many times in my life, where I'm like, Bernie's going to save us. And
totally,
it's like, okay, Bernie was my Luke Skywalker.
totally.
It's like, hey, Ryan, maybe you do something to change
Yeah.
your life and the way you're interacting or treating people and things like that, and be the as they say, be the change, instead of waiting for Bernie to save us.
And maybe you find five like-minded people, and now there's six of you, and you all have the ability to change something that one person alone couldn't do, right? And it spreads, and it's mimetic, and it's interweaving all of our lives together. Um, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited for this, and I know that it's going to be met with great success. And the show, the crowdfunding, it's going to take off. And the idea of having that thing worm into your brain and be
Yeah.
like, create me, create me. So maybe it's more like a
Yeah.
caterpillar that's just like, like, you better open up your brain because I'm about to
Yeah.
spread my wings, motherfucker. It's like, I love that. And you and I relate to so many things.
Yeah.
I resonate with a lot of the things you say and you speak about, and I think that's why I love you so much. There's
I love you too, buddy.
there's this great project. It's called Liminal. It's happening as of a few days ago.
Yeah.
The crowd, be a part of it. So be a part of it. It's the creativeness and the way you're rewarding participation is really cool.
Thanks, man.
And I can't wait to jump over there and be a part of that. The seedandspark.com/fund/liminal team
Liminal
is,
show for the
or
Seed and
liminal
Spark.
show.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's
It's
at
all good.
liminal team is the YouTube.
At Team Liminal is the
At
YouTube.
team. Oh,
There are
shit.
so
Okay.
listen, there were so many, only so many things where I could match it up because they were
Yeah, no, I
available
get
on
it.
different.
But don't worry, because you're not typing as I speak anyway. All
Right.
of those links will be hyperlinked in the show notes. So all, everywhere you can find Dash on social media, et cetera, et cetera. And oh damn, I mean, it's good. And it's only going to keep going. And you got the laurels to, and the awards and the recognition. So this is people's chance to get in kind of on the ground floor. Maybe
And
there's
I
a
gotta.
ladder up to the second floor here that they can climb in a window
Well,
and get in on it.
we're building the ladder together, and I gotta say, and this is a big part of it. One of the things that I need people to help support us investing in the future, because one of the greatest tragedies, Ryan, is that we have not investigated anything together yet.
My gosh. Yeah,
That's wild to think about. That's
that is wild.
wild to think
That
about.
is wild.
And like, we got stuff. You're already on. I've got a dream show. I've talked to you about it. I've talked to you about this is in the future. This is we're shooting Liminal, and one day I want to assemble the dream team of paranormal investigators, of which you are on. And we're going to Muncie, Indiana. And this is following up on John Keel, wrote that there's an apartment 12 Gay Street in the East Village that is haunted by a fictional character from The Shadow, because Walter Gibson, who wrote The Shadow, lived there and imbued this with energy. So he says that there's a tulpa. I say we go to Muncie, Indiana. And this is, people think that I'm joking when I say this, and I am not. I'm 100% serious. We're going to Muncie, Indiana to make contact with the thought form of America's favorite lasagna cat. Egra Garfield is the project. And
Yes.
it's, listen, and Liminal has to succeed, so that Liminal needs to walk so that Egra Garfield may fly. But that's not going to be our first one together. We're going to do stuff before that. And one of the things one of the things I want, I want to be able to, because I self-funded the pilot. I just sort of like, I dug deep, and I was like, I gotta, a lot of volunteer work, a lot of, gas money and hotels and all these stuff. I was like, I gotta save up. I just gotta do this. And I'm looking at, we have this 10 episode first season that we want to shoot. And I'm like, I love where I see this trajectory. I can see the road out in front of me, but I can't do it with my money because I don't have the money. But I do think that if people get on board, it lets more of these investigations take place. It lets me reach out to my friends. It lets me reach out to you and be like, hey, let me get you a flight to this place we're going to investigate. Come do this with us. I can, it is collaborative, and it gets all of these hands on the ball, and it gets all of this. It opens the door to so much more cool, interesting paranormal investigations from perspectives of people whose perspectives I want to work with. And I just all of this to say I'm very excited to investigate with you, but when we do that.
I can't wait. I can't wait. And you've always been in, all your eggs in a basket type of person. So
That's true.
and that's another thing that resonates with me. How many credit cards have I had to close over the last 20
Ooh.
years because I'm like, this thing is going to be the thing and I'm putting it all on,
Yeah.
but that's the kind of passion that gets imbued into Liminal. And that's why people will connect with it. And I love that it's going to be offering this opportunity for these synchronicities, right? And the interactive nature of participation. And, people listening to this who are familiar with the paranormal, they understand how that is part of the phenomena.
Yeah.
And that it interacts with you, even if it's from something you're just watching from a great distance and from a great time has passed as well. And it speaks to the nonlinear nature. And I'm almost finishing up a masterclass, Ken Burns masterclass on documentary filmmaking.
Rad.
And it's been really interesting because I don't make, none of my projects are trying to bring to life necessarily like a historical event like the Civil War or something, but listening to his passion for the interview subjects, the material itself, and the reverence and the respect that he holds for the things he approaches and wants to showcase and get into is, to me, it's the biggest takeaway so far from the whole thing. It's how much passion he has about it and how much love he has for the process. And I think, you and I have both spoken to so many people over the years, and, some of them, are no longer around doing this or whatever. And they found their other passions or whatever it is. And whatever is, the excitement, the passion, and the universe putting that caterpillar in your brain. And here we are now. So it's really cool. It's really cool to see the spreading of the wings. So any final thought you want to leave everybody with?
Ooh, final thoughts. I think, the thing that I always say to people about magic and investigation is like, you could just do it. So many people will watch a show and think like, oh, I want to try that. And I'm here to tell you, do it. Go for it. It's cool. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. You can do it by yourself. It's much more fun with friends. This is getting into some stuff that I wrote in the zine, but this is not, I think we talked a little bit about sort of the democratization of art, about not waiting for the networks, not waiting for you know, someone to have you make a whole Wile E. Coyote movie and then decide that no one can see it, all this stuff, right? But it's the same. It's not just making projects, and it's not just paranormal investigation for show. People can just do it for fun. And especially with your phone, you can record everything on your phone now. Like, the more people get in their hands stirring the cosmic soup, the more people getting into it, I think the better. And you know, the more voices, the more diversity of opinion, the more people who are, you know, investigating something that they don't understand and trying to understand it a little better, even if it's unknowable, even if it is by definition something that you can never know for sure, yes or no. The more ideas you got, the cooler, the weirder ideas you got, the better. So just, you know, that's what I'm trying to do with my show. I All the support that we can get on our crowdfund, all the support we can get, even if someone just watches and shares, that's huge. Watching the pilot and letting someone know, like, hey, I think you would like this, passing it off to your friends, letting people know, like, even if, you know, it's tough times, not everyone has the money for a crowdfund thing, even just sharing the crowdfund, tweeting about it, posting about the show. That's what I'm trying to do. And I'm also trying to encourage other people to get out there and go somewhere strange, sit in a dark room with some friends and see what you can find, because I'm here to tell you it's probably going to be weird and your life will be more interesting for it.
Yeah. Take a spooky chance.
Hell yeah.
I love it. This has been great. Dash, thank you. And listeners, thank you for listening. I know you enjoyed it. All the links are going to be in the show notes. And everything you need to know will be in the notes. And do you have a link tree by chance?
I gotta make a link tree with all the stuff. I think that actually would be smart. And now that you've said it, I will make it, and then I'll go ahead and I'll shoot that to you, and then you'll have my one as well. I have to learn how to make it.
It is. I will tell you this. The good news is,
yeah,
it is. I made one, I don't know, a few years ago.
Yeah.
Now. Very easy.
Okay, sick.
It's just copy and pasting the URLs into
Amazing.
into the blank line on the Linktree thing. It's very easy. So
amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, I can't wait. And you know, we'll be doing this again. And I'm also very excited about future investigations. So
hell yeah.
We know that. Okay.
Ryan,
we'll
thank
talk
you
soon.
so much. Thank you so much for having me. As always, it has been such a blast.
Oh, pleasure's all mine, my friend.